You're very welcome to another episode of the Scaling Your Business podcast. For this episode, we're staying in the UK to be joined by Jamie Beaumont, the founder of Playter Pay and Offered. Jamie, you're very welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Chuffed to have you. Typical fashion with the podcast, focus on three main areas: early influences, challenges, and pivotal moments. So if we go right back to the beginning with you, I believe you grew up, through my research, if it's done correctly, southwest of London, near Leatherhead. I could be wrong with that. I just went where you went to school.
Yeah, very good. Very good you did on me. Yeah, so I grew up in a place called Cobham in Surrey, and then kind of worked my way closer and closer to London and kind of settled down in southwest London. Actually just moved out to Windsor.
Nice.
But yeah, most of my life has kind of been spent kind of southwest.
So talk to me about growing up southwest London, or as you made your way there. What were some of your, or are there any standout memories from your childhood, favorite memories?
Favorite memories from my childhood, many. I went to Israel long time ago now and did something called the Aerodium, which is basically like a massive fan, and it replicates skydiving. And and I was quite small when I was growing up. Kids grew a lot quicker than I did. I mean, I'm only 5'10" now, so I'm not exactly massive. But I remember when I was 13, I was hardly 5 foot, and we went on this Aerodium thing. And because I was so small and young, I had to go with an instructor. And it wasn't enclosed. It had an open roof, but huge walls, kind of surrounding it. And it was just a circle effectively. And because I was so light, I actually flew just over the roof gathering. So I was in open air, and could have just floated either side off and pretty much probably killed myself. So I'm floating above this whole thing. And then obviously they've kind of lost the plot and seen that there's this small child teetering on, bordering on
Death.
death and life and death. I didn't know this, having great, absolutely great time. So they decide to send an instructor up, but obviously the instructor's heavier than me, so they can only get within a certain space of me to try and wean the fan down and down and down till we get there. I didn't realize that afterwards my mum's in fits for the entire thing, whilst I'm laughing and having a great time. She's in tears, thinking her son's about to get blown off. And that was great fun. Lots of fantastic childhood memories. Not specifically just down in Surrey or southwest London, but yeah, that's one that stands out to me.
I love it. That's a great start. Sticking with your childhood, inspirations. Anyone that you can recall, whether it's a mentor, a coach, a teacher, a parent, another loved one who inspired you or believe had a positive impact on the person you are today.
I mean, there's a lot of people that get, parents obviously. My granddad is an absolute hero. Was an absolute hero, and he started a business himself with his granddad. We own nothing of it now, unfortunately, but yeah, I mean it's a FTSE 100 company now. He was an incredibly astute businessman. He was incredibly grounded as well. My granny is exactly the same. And if I can do, 1/1000th of what he did, I'm gonna have a pretty good life. So he's fairly inspirational. Yeah, generally speaking, I've been very, very lucky to surround myself, family and friends, with people who are fantastic, very supportive, doing very, very good things. I've got and I don't stay on. I'm kind of off the beaten track. So I've got a best friend who's out in Nigeria at the moment, and he's doing some amazing things. You've got great people around me who are incredibly supportive, but I've got to admit, there's not one particular person that goes, that's who I aspire to be. You've got all these people who have your Musks and all of that. Not really. Yeah, I don't really look at them and think, wow, those are absolute legends. That's who I want to be. But it's kind of a mixture of everyone I've ever had in my life. I think that's probably the main
Positive
ones,
sign.
I'd
You've
say.
been surrounded by a lot of good people then. Shout out to
Mm.
your granddad and your friend in Nigeria who you referenced. Before we jump into all good things business, what's one thing you like to do outside of work?
I love cooking. I'm an absolute. I just think it's not just relaxing, but the whole process of cooking, preparing, actually doing it, and then listening to my wife complain about it afterwards, is just I absolutely love it. There are a few things. I mean, I love sport, so cricket. I was at the cricket last night at the Oval. Massive cricket fan. Love cooking. Um, if you took those away from me, life would be far more complicated and stressful, I think, in my mind. Yeah, like getting up in the morning, going for a run. Um, these are just the types of things I love doing, just outside of work. Helps with life in general, but it's good fun as well.
Absolutely. So, looking through your LinkedIn and other podcasts you've recorded, got a series of questions for you. First one is you were co-founder of a clothing business back 2013. Um, how
Yeah.
did you get involved in that? Like, what was it that had you stepped foot in the clothing business?
Yeah, because most people who know me wouldn't think of me as a fashion icon. I can tell you that. So I did ski seasons, and we were out
Nice.
on ski seasons, and we just saw we're actually in Val d'Isere and noticed that a lot of people would come into resort in fancy dress, mainly retro ski wear, like old school ski wear, bright, pinks and greens and blues, just very retro stuff. And they'd constantly come in, and sometimes they wouldn't bring their retro stuff, or they didn't have retro stuff. So they'd want to rent it or they want to buy it. And we thought, actually, this is quite good fun. Um, why don't we just create our own, retro ski suit?
Mm.
So we designed our own retro ski suit. Um, we got them made. I had the funding to kind of get the first few made and the prototypes, and we got them made out in China using Alibaba at the time. And it went really well, and people liked them. And before we knew it, we were back in England. We were touring around all the universities. We had caps, we had t-shirts, we had jumpers. We're back out in resorts and selling them, and it was just really good fun actually. It wasn't probably something that was ever going to last, but yeah, it was really good fun, and that's basically how we got into it.
According to your LinkedIn, I'm not sure if you've started any other ventures before that, but that was your first stab at running a business. Now we referenced founded a platter and offered. Any lessons you took from whether the operational, the marketing, the sales side of that business that you still carry forward to today?
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally a big fan of kind of service-based businesses. I think we're a very service-based, kind of market in the UK anyway. One thing I learned, and I respect hugely of anyone that does this, is when you go into things like clothing or any other any other type of business where you actually have to maintain stock creation, but spend all the money and then hope to gain that money back. Um, you just really, you really need to know that what you're doing is right, and that applies in every single business. But the one thing I learned is that, especially within fashion and stuff like that, was you don't make clothes that you like. You have to actually look at the market and see what the market is saying and build it based on them. Because if you spend 10 grand on a bunch of clothes, you better make 10 grand back. And if you don't, the business model is flawed. And I think, we weren't the most profitable business in the world. But it did teach me that you really need to think carefully about supply and demand, the product that you're building, listening to your market, and understanding that it's not necessarily what you think is the right thing, it's what the market will tell you. So I learned a lot in that, into taking things on into the next businesses.
You spent 6 years working in recruitment in some capacity before you got involved with your own ventures. You put up a recent post on talent versus relevant experience. You
Mhm.
think many people are looking at the wrong metric. Can you explain the thoughts behind that post? What
Yeah, of
led you to put it up?
course. Yeah, of course. I mean, so I speak to a lot of recruiters at the moment, and I speak to a lot of businesses who are hiring as part of that's what our business means. And at the moment, we're getting a lot of people tell us that there's not enough talent in the market, and they're finding it very difficult to hire for the roles that they've got open. And I see it somewhat differently. I think looking at what they're actually saying is they can't find people with the specific relevant experience that they need to take that specific role. And actually, in a market like this, you need to look at the wider, broader aspect of the word talent. And that could be someone who's incredibly talented, intelligent, hardworking, diligent, a huge amount of tenacity and passion. These types of individuals can pick up most of what you're doing. Right. If you're if you're a doctor or a lawyer, very, very different. You need qualifications, you need that vocational background. But if you're going to things like sales, recruitment, or marketing, these guys and girls will pick this up very, very easily. And I think a lot of people are looking at, we need 3 years experience within this, rather than saying we have an exceptional individual here. Why don't we invest in that individual? And so I think the word, looking for talent, you should look for that talent. Don't necessarily just plug onto the experience behind that individual. Look for someone who can actually build on that talent, and you'll find a lot more individuals out there. So I just wanted to put it out there. And, too many conversations of people saying they can't find a talent. The talent is out there. The experience might not be, but let's look at building people up and building their careers, not just ready-made.
You make a solid point. How can a company uncover if someone has that talent and willing to put in that work? Is it in the application process that some people just put the extra effort in standing out and not to overlook those people? Are there signs that you can see that this person might not necessarily have the 5 or 8 years or 12 years of experience that is required? Because I see a lot of that lately, but they're just willing to get their hands, into the thing, and they're one of the hardest workers in the room.
Yeah, so I think if you're going to hire someone that's right for you without the experience, I think you need to base it on your business and you personally, whether you're hiring manager, business leader, whoever it might be, and point in question. So Playter, we're a small business. The people we hire, I want them to be able to tell me I'm wrong as the founder. I don't want people who are going to be subservient and get on with what they're doing if there could be a better way of doing it. I want to hire intelligent people who are ready to tell me I'm wrong. So I put up a post and I spelt chief wrong in the post, hoping that I would get people tell me, by the way, you made a mistake here. And it's a very subtle thing, but those types of individuals are really important to me. And if I bring them on, I want them to have that, because I'm not right all the time. And we're interviewing some great people, and every single one of them messaged me and said, by the way, number one, I'm keen, and number two, you spelled chief wrong. I just thought I'd let you know. Awesome, fantastic. Now that's not relevant to every single business moving forward. And I had a lot of people, by the way, call me up and say that's going to put lots of people off. All right, hands up, fine. That's the whole point of it, is to put people off who won't be right in our situation and attract the people that will. But the process that you have in interviewing or attracting should be geared towards what you need from that person. If it's experience, fine, then gear it on that. But if you're basing it on talent, then you need to base it on raw attributes rather than skills, because you can't learn an attribute. If you're looking for someone who's tenacious, send them through an application process that needs them to show that tenacity. But yeah, I think it all needs to be geared around you as a business and then the actual person that you need.
Partnerships is something that I'm seeing pop up more and more and more. In the company that I've been involved in, they announced 2 to 3 new partnerships a quarter. And I see that you recently announced a partnership with Zero. What are your thoughts on partnerships going forward? Is it another way to grow the business and develop relationships?
Yeah, so I had a good friend of mine, actually. His dad has a saying that partnerships are the worst ship to ever sail. And the reason he says that is because it absorbs so much resource from both parties. There's so much expectancy from both parties to provide inside of that partnerships. And I think when we're early on in the business, we didn't really have the capacity to give as much as we would have liked to have done. And I made some partnerships that weren't very good. And I lived by that saying. Now we're slightly more robust in what we do. I think partnerships are going to be really important moving forward. I think we're, as a business, we help SMEs, and there are millions of them out there, small businesses, and we can't get to all of them. And so I think working with distribution partners who can help us get in front of thousands, if not millions of SMEs, will be really important. And then being able to offer them the value that they can then offer their community, whoever it might be, through our product is really important. But I think having good partners in business is really essential. And I think actually more than not, I see bad partnerships based on greed. This person can get me this, rather than this, this partnership, how's it going to work? How can we both give value to each other? And therefore, this is reciprocal, rather than, oh yeah, these guys can give me, 2 million in revenue a year. Let's keep them on board and just keep them happy. That's not, it'll never work in the long run. So I think partnerships will be really, really important moving forward. Xero is an unbelievable one for us. They're a massive business, and it will be great for us. But we also add value to them. We have a product that can help the businesses that use Xero, so we're hoping we can reciprocate that in some form. But yeah, I do like partnerships. I think we will explore more moving forward, and hopefully, we'll have some more announcements over the next couple of months as well with some.
You referenced that you work with SMEs. Typical audience for this is the owners of those companies across the UK and Ireland. So for those listening, curious to know what you do, what is it that you do?
So we're effectively the world's first 0% hire now, pay later finance. So if you grow using recruitment agencies, we basically fund your invoices. So we help you split the cost of those invoices over 6 months for 0% finance, to offer you a way of maintaining healthy cash flow and investing in other areas inside of the business. That would have meant that you've got a huge burn. You're spending 50 grand that month on recruitment fees. Well, you don't have to. We can help you spread the cost of that, and then obviously grow the business in a more digestible and organic way. So yeah, any SMEs that look to grow using those functions, we're a partner, I suppose you could say.
Links to your social, your website, and all the good stuff will be linked below if anybody wants to get in contact with Jamie. Jamie, I'm curious to know. I always get this messed up. I don't know if GCSEs come first and then A levels to get to uni. I'm going to take it the A levels are the one that you do to get into university, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you could add one subject that was mandatory or a key skill to have in secondary school that people had to do for the A levels, what would that be? That's not currently on the curriculum.
Finance.
Why?
I don't think people walk into life understanding finance, and it's incredibly damaging. What's tax? How do you get a mortgage? What salary should I be looking for? If I pay rent, what should I be doing? What type of expenses am I going to have? How do I live? What's the value of the pound? Do I live in the black or the red? I think people walk out of that completely clueless. They end up putting, get themselves credit cards. Understanding credit. You need good debt to have good credit, which is odd, but it's the way of life. I don't think people understand it. I honestly think they have no clue. I speak to so many people whose life goals are to have expensive things, and it's all very materialistic. Fine, but do you understand how to get there? And I walked out of school with no understanding of this. Getting a mortgage was an eye opener to me. Even trying to get a mortgage as a business owner is an eye opener. Do you want to start a business? Yeah. Okay. Do you want a mortgage? Yeah. Well, don't, because you won't get one. It's simple as that. So I think it's really important we start actually teaching people much younger, how the finance system works in life, because actually it's not something you can change. You can't have a little, chin wag with the bank and be like, lower your rates just for me. It doesn't work that way. And unfortunately, it's a big kick in the gut when you do start learning it. So I'd enforce it.
I love that. I couldn't agree more. I had no clue about money, where to put it, what to do with it. I came into money on my second business, and for about a year and a half, 2 years, I was incredibly immature. And only when I got a number of financial consultations and got my head wrapped around it, then I became better to it. But if that was mandatory as part of secondary school, who knows? Maybe I needed to go through that immature period. Perhaps not. But for any Irish listeners, all of what Jamie says there, I 100% agree with. However, the one thing that's different in Ireland than in England is you do not need to go into debt to get a good credit. Or what am I trying to say?
Credit rating.
You don't need. Yes, that America, UK, yes, Ireland, no, and a lot of people think that that's the case in Ireland. So any Irish listeners, just be aware you do not need that at all.
That's great. How does it work?
in Ireland, well, you don't need to go into debt to get a good credit rating. It's if you don't pay back your debt, you get penalized, but you don't need to go in to get a good credit rating.
It's great. It's the way it should be.
Yes, it certainly is. It certainly is. In a previous interview, you were asked, or when you were asked, what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs? There was three things that you listed. One of them was be ready to sacrifice everything.
Mhm,
Um, entrepreneurship seems to be now a cool thing to do.
mhm.
I personally know that it's a very lonely road and probably a roller coaster of emotions. Most definitely a roller coaster of emotions. One of the things that I started doing at the start of this year was actually a bi-weekly counseling session. Not because I'm depressed or anything, just to help me on my journey of being an entrepreneur. So I'd like you to explain what you meant by that comment in terms of be ready to sacrifice everything, because I think there's a lot of noise going around of entrepreneurship is the cool thing to do, where in reality, there was a post you put up, you hadn't paid yourself for over 2 years or taken money out of the business.
Yeah, I didn't have a salary for 2 years. I mean, listen, you're right. The word entrepreneur is a very fashionable word now. It's a bit of a catwalk. I don't think people truly understand what it means to start a business. Um, you you think it's freedom, but you're actually, everything. You don't get holiday time off. If you're not in the business, it doesn't run, and if it doesn't run, your business fails. You're constantly on, like your brain. I'm sure you're the same, Rian. Like you're
Yeah.
constantly on. You cannot turn off. And unless you're successful, and I say this as I've been same as you alone for a long time, 3 years now. It is a very, very lonely road. You can have co-founders, all these different types of things, but those are for tech businesses. So it's, you might have business partners. A lot of people do it alone. You you just don't have any certainty in life. There is, everything is risky. There's no certainty. Every decision you make could be the best or worst decision and could have ultimate impact on your business. Um, it isn't just something where you turn up at 9 in the morning, you do some work, you leave at 5 in the evening, and the business is just going to run well. It just doesn't work that way. I've been up at 4 in the morning, um, with crisis, waking up, oh my God, I need to do this. I've been, it, it's just something people need to understand, that if you need to build a business, it is your business, and by that it's your life. Work-life balance, say goodbye to that. Yes, you can go off and you can leave early and all that kind of stuff, but you work on weekends. You never switch off. If there's a crisis, it's up to you to handle that crisis and fix it, not somebody else. And only when you can hire people and be lucky enough to do that can you delegate, but then you've got someone to look after and their livelihood. And it's different color flames, but it's fires nonetheless that you need to put out. So I just think everybody should know that you sacrifice your personal life. And this, by the way, I chose to do this. It's the best thing I've ever done in my entire life, and I wouldn't change it. But you should know that if you're willing to give up your personal life, if you're willing to take on stress, anxiety, risk, it's very lonely, huge amounts of mental health pressure, then it's absolutely fine. If you're willing to take on the financial insecurity, if you understand that it could have, it could go tits up at any point, and you could be left, looking for a job in no time. All of that, if you're willing to do it, go ahead. But it is really, really, really tough, but it's incredibly rewarding. But it's not something you just go and do and suddenly you're Steve Jobs. It just doesn't work that way.
The debate I've had in my head towards the end of last year, entering this year, was is being a founder, does that give you true freedom or the illusion of freedom? And I've settled on it gives you the illusion of
Mhm.
freedom. And
It's yeah, completely.
yeah,
You
it's
don't
certainly a
have
strange journey.
Yeah, you don't have. I mean, listen, I suppose you have a master definition sheet, right, of what all these things mean. Like, what does freedom mean to you? And everything is
Mm,
fairly subjective. But but I think the problem is no one. If you go on TechCrunch, right, you see all these successful businesses, and therefore you read success stories. I almost think you should have, the opposite. to show people, this business went out of business today. This business went out. This business failed to gain funding. This business, is under litigation. This business, you will only ever read the success stories unless they're green selling, the high profile ones that are bad news. But those are the guys and girls who have, created huge amount of capital events for themselves. So they have wealth behind them. And they will show the illusion of freedom, of having the money, being able to take a private plane somewhere, having holiday time off, whatever it is, having a big house. But we don't have that. 99.9% of us don't have that. So we have the same stress, we have the same business running, but we don't have the wealth and kind of freedom that comes with it. And because of that, unfortunately, as you said, it's the illusion of freedom.
Somebody put up a post on LinkedIn yesterday, the day before, and it made me laugh. And the title, it's Unicorn Mating Season. I just had to laugh at that. What's a commonly held belief about your industry, recruitment, that you passionately disagree with?
Well, I suppose that they're all trying to change the industry. They're all trying to do things differently. I think I actually did a post on this at one point. Is how many times can somebody leave their job, create a recruitment business, and tell the recruitment industry they're doing something different, only then to go and do things exactly the same as everybody else. I can't remember what it is, but in the lean startup or something, they try to define what a startup is, and it's or an entrepreneur. It's doing something where you're not just doing something similar, but you're creating risk and innovation within that process. And there's not a lot of innovation within recruitment. It's starting to happen. I'm seeing some bits of good innovation, and we have a common connection who I think is fantastic and innovating within the recruitment industry. But a lot of them, well over 90% think that they are complete innovators and moonshots, and they're it's just doppelgangers, one after the other. But green shoots, we are starting to see some fantastic innovating recruiters come through, but the large majority unfortunately just aren't.
Are there any books, podcasts, mentors that you go to continue to upskill or improve?
So I actually I like I like some of these kind of startup and business leader books, but I'm also not a huge fan of being a sponge. I think if you stick too many ingredients in something, it's just a bunch of ingredients and it has no kind of taste of its own, let's say. I think a lot of people look towards too many sources of inspiration, end up absorbing all of it and then contradict themselves and actually never knowing where to go. This person says we should do this, but this person says we should do this. And there are a million and one different ways to run a business. So I like to stick to the methods in which I believe. The lean startup for me is great. I believe in, consistent feedback and iterating and learning, whether it's been a bad outcome or a good outcome. Did that outcome give you learning, and therefore you can progress from that? So books like the lean startup and blitz scaling that allows you to think about, should you be blitz scaling? It's not always a good thing to scale your business. There are some great books out there. I don't take inspiration from many, because it'll just give me, if I absorb someone's view and then absorb another person's view and they're contradictory, what do I do as an individual? I can't learn from both. My business won't survive constant learnings from that. So yeah, I think Eric Ries is a great one to look at.
Two final questions. I don't know who you live with, but all your loved ones are safe. Your house is burning down. You can only save one item. What one item would that be?
My loved ones are safe. Yeah, my guitar.
Nice. Any reason? You just like your guitar?
One of them. I find, I probably should have said this at the beginning as well, I find playing guitar and singing quite soothing. And I used to do quite a lot of gigs, and I've really enjoyed it. And sometimes when I get super stressed out, just picking the guitar up and having a jam yeah, I suppose I could probably just kind of play as the house was burning down, knowing that I've got pretty much everything. Um, and yeah, I think that would be it. Probably my guitar.
Final question is, I'd like you to imagine it's the year 2030. We're talking now in 2030, and you're looking back on the previous decade. You can answer this personally or professionally or both. What would you
Yeah.
like to be looking back on?
Oh, personally, that's easy. This has all been, a success. I've got, a couple of kids. I've got a nice big house. More importantly, I've got a nice big wine cellar. And everyone I know is still alive, and we're having good fun. That's an easy one on a personal level. I'm not a big fan. I don't want, sports cars, expensive watches, or any of that stuff. I don't like flying, so I don't want a private jet. I don't like boats, so I don't want a yacht. I'd just be happy with, nice house somewhere with a big garden, big wine cellar, my family there. Looking back professionally, I mean, over the next 20, 30, last 10 years, I'd like to have seen some insane amount of innovation within things like the actual climate change, for instance. So electric cars that actually come to fruition, for instance. I'd like to see a lot of change within government as well, and politics. And it'd be nice to have, I mean, the one main thing I'd love to see is secretaries of state who actually are experts within their field, rather than just bringing in a random posh bloke to lead health and transport and all of this, when they've got no experience in it. And professionally, on my side, I'd love to have a fantastically well-run business with lots of happy employees. Everyone's earning good money. I think that's about it.
It's not only an English problem; it's a worldwide problem. That is, by the way. And I was talking to a guy who is the owner of a company called Amarenco. They're valued at about £80 million, and he says if they can crack it, hydrogen cars, he believes, are the way of the future, not electric. So, be interesting to see.
Yeah, I agree with him. Hydrogen is, I mean, I've actually got the best friend who's in Nigeria. He's a big fan of hydrogen. Hydrogen is literally, when you create electricity, it actually, in some instances can create more pollutants than anything else. So hydrogen is probably, I agree with him. If we can create hydrogen-based cars and engines, great, fantastic, let's do it. Not my field though, so I'll let someone else do
Yeah,
that.
exactly. I certainly will. Jamie, it's been a pleasure spending the last 35 minutes chatting to you, getting to know you a little more. I wish you nothing but the best going forward. But for
Thank you.
today, let's leave it there. Thank you for being my guest.
Thank you very much.